a shoulder injury several years ago that just really stopped my yoga practice. And that was a problem for me because it was meeting needs on so many different levels. But now I have learned to spend more time in meditation and, walking, getting exercise in different ways. I can finally do chaturanga again this year for the first
Uh,
time since
yeah, I had a
2019.
rotator cuff repair
Hmm.
and actually got a frozen shoulder afterward, and it was yoga that unfroze it right before they were about to take me back into surgery.
Ah,
Like, oh, give me a couple weeks. And so
uh-huh.
thank God for yoga.
Me too. Exactly. It's been the only thing that keeps everything working. And even my gallbladder tried to quit on me, and I said, "Give me a couple of weeks. I'm going to see if I can't get this guy back in shape." And sure enough, I've been pain free for a week now, so without having to get it ripped out. So
Ah,
doing the best we can.
right. That's right. Day
Well,
by
enough
day.
of that fun stuff. Let's get down to talking about Michelle's monkeys. And I'll share a little bit about my experience because I experienced your workshop at one of Dawn's retreats. And I also want to talk to you, just ask you a little bit about your experience in starting this practice because before you started Am I Hungry, you were counseling, right?
No, I was actually a family doctor.
Family doctor.
In
Okay.
some ways, I was doing some counseling. I mean,
Right.
family physicians deal
Family
with
practice. Got it.
the
Okay.
full spectrum of wellness and as well as illness. And so, yes.
Well, and that's why, from a CEO perspective, I want to ask you about that transition from family doctor to this practice because there's a huge unknown in that transition, kind of a shift in how you manage your business, a
Mhm.
shift in how you get your business. So I think that's a valuable part of the conversation if you're open
Absolutely.
to talking about it. Okay, I'm going to pause and then I'm going to lead in with an introduction and then we'll start the conversation. Sound good? Welcome, friends, to the Crazy as Usual podcast with Donna Carlson and Michelle May today. She is a family doctor and a certified speaking professional who has founded a business called Am I Hungry? She empowers audiences to take charge of their lives and their well being. I have experienced her authenticity and passion for mindful eating and vibrant living because it's come from her own personal struggle with food and body image. After years of ineffective yo yo dieting, she developed a mindful, non diet approach to food and movement and self care. So, with personal experience and professional expertise, Michelle inspires new thinking and leaves people with kind of a new approach to vibrant well-being. I love the use of the word vibrant, Michelle. I think there's so many words for how we can live fully alive and holistically well. I love that you founded Am I Hungry, the mindful eating programs to really share a process that we can all follow for a compassionate, constructive, life-changing approach through health and wellness professionals and community programs. I know you've taught at retreats. So let's talk a little bit about mindful eating and why you got there. And gosh, the crazy transition as a CEO from family practice to creating this business. Welcome, Michelle. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Donna. Looking forward to this conversation.
Good. Well, you really do lead like a boss. I've always respected the way that you lead and you manage your business and you have good boundaries. We were just talking about that, about whether we fill the margins or actually bleed to the edge. And there are some repercussions in life. So tell me about the transition from family practice to creating Am I Hungry? What was going through your head? What were the monkeys telling you about whether this was possible or not? Can you afford to make this transition?
Oh, I love this question. So, like many people who love what they do, as you do, I really came into this because of my own personal struggle with food. I'd had an undiagnosed eating disorder and disordered eating since I was a teen. I like to say I went from middle school to medical school with this little secret
Yeah.
that, really was causing a big rift in my life. It didn't match what people were seeing on the outside. And because of that, I felt out of alignment. I felt inauthentic. And so when I finally figured out what to do differently, I just became so passionate about sharing that with other people. And we can talk a little bit about how this is different, but that's really what led to that move out of family medicine into my own business, which now we're celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. So it's
Wow.
it's a real thing.
How has that changed your life? The difference between these, I know from talking to other doctors how you're just shuffling one person and another out of in and out of your office, and the business, the way you run your business looks different. How does that affect Michelle's life?
I loved family medicine. I as a specialty, you really get to delve beyond just, blood pressure and other medical factors. You really get to know people.
Yeah.
So leaving that practice was challenging for me, but it was clearly the right choice, and I have never regretted it for one moment. That doesn't mean it wasn't challenging at times. There were lots of times when I know the first year we were living on a loan because I had planned to leave the practice at some point, but it happened abruptly because of a decision my boss made at the time, where she actually wanted me to work more hours instead of less. And that was going to create more stress on me and my family and my new business. So I just decided the time was then, and I made that leap, and lived on loans for a year. And fortunately, that has not been a challenge since then. But nonetheless, you got to follow your heart. You got to follow your passion, right?
Well, and that is the critical juncture that a lot of business entrepreneurs make. We we have if we have to make a move from a income that we can count on to the unknown, finance that, get through the financing, pay back the loans. Um, how did you feel, or what were the monkeys telling you in that process of making that transition?
Well, I have this saying that I picked up from a mentor at one point, that how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yeah.
And as it turned out, the problems I was having with food were the same problems that were showing up in my business. So
Interesting.
so my monkeys are perfectionism. It's not good enough. You've got to, look a certain way, do a certain thing, be a certain way. And sometimes, as you know, with perfectionism, ironically, it actually keeps you stuck instead of instead of putting out something that's excellent, you can't put anything out at all.
Right.
And in my eating world, this was showing up as yo-yo dieting and weight cycling, and on the diet, off the diet. And what I've discovered in working with thousands and thousands of people since then is that trap, that perfectionism trap, the it's not good enough trap, is very, very common in people that I work with and help. And when we help heal that in their relationship with food, it gets better in other areas of their lives too, as it did in mine.
I love that you brought up that parallel. It never occurred to me before, but I can see it in my life too. When I am on a more disciplined eating pattern, habit, in even a schedule, it is reflected in the discipline in my business. And it hadn't really occurred to me before. And I think there's one thing that a lot of people don't think of at all. And I bet you're pretty expert in helping people diagnose how what they eat impacts their cognitive ability, their mental clarity, presence of mind. Have you run into that in your own transition?
Well, actually, so my undergraduate degree was in psychology, and maybe that should have been the path I followed instead of becoming a doctor. But I've always been really interested in psychology and the behavior of the mind, the behavior or how behaviors show up based on what we're thinking.
Mhm.
And for me, I don't see it as my job to tell people what to eat or even educate them about how food affects them. There are thousands, if not millions of people doing that these
Yeah.
days, right?
Yeah.
My expertise, my sweet spot is helping people understand why they do what they do. And
Oh,
so I literally teach people how to make decisions, not what decisions to make. Does that make sense?
yeah, I love that. What I remember that from taking your workshop years ago at a yoga retreat, that you weren't there to tell us what to even eat off of the buffet. You're there to help us to understand how it um, impacts our body, what our relationship is with the food, what we're hoping the food's going to do for us. And you were a major proponent in my whole philosophy in coaching to teach people to be more self-aware rather than follow rules that anyone else prescribe. Just pay attention to how food is working in your body and design your own plan accordingly.
Exactly. So you said a couple things that reflect that lesson stuck with you. The fact that you make your own decisions about your eating pattern, that you have awareness about how it affects you in work, that there's awareness of how what you eat affects your productivity. So my belief is that people can discover this for themselves, and when they do, it will be much longer lasting than some expert telling them what to do.
Hmm.
So, Am I Hungry? My company, Am I Hungry, is all about an inside out approach versus the very common and conventional and frankly ineffective outside in approach that's so prevalent these days.
Well, and I know from experience that when people tell me what I can and can't eat, I want to test the boundaries of these rules all
Yeah,
the time. That's probably why I've never survived in a corporate workplace very long. No one's ever going to hire me now. But when you're living life according to rules and you don't really embody them or really live them out of your own values, it's fakery. and
that's right.
and and once I started making decisions about food based on how I want to feel, which is only based on my experience and not on what anyone told me. It totally changed the way
Oh,
that I make decisions about food. And I still eat junk on weekends or on a Friday night when it's not going to impact me so much, but I don't have it very often. In
are
fact,
you open to a little coaching right now?
I would love that. Show me how it's done.
All right. So two things that you said that I think really bear focusing on. One is the point that it's not about being good, it's about feeling good.
Uh-huh.
So that's the difference between inside out and outside in.
Okay.
So, from that standpoint, would you be open to dropping the word junk from your vocabulary?
Ah.
It's just food. Some foods don't leave you feeling very good. Some foods are mainly for pleasure, not so much for nutrition. Some foods maybe cause reactions that you don't like, and so forth.
Hmm.
So, junk is somebody else's definition. And for you, you know that these are foods that leave you feeling a little less productive the next day. So, you choose to eat them on the weekends. It
Yeah.
doesn't need a label, it's just a decision you're making
It's
at
just
that
a food.
time.
Yeah. I love that. That's a really great point. It takes the judgment out of what I'm eating. It just like people apologize for standing in a doorway when you're trying to come in. I'm like, don't apologize for standing in the doorway. You deserve the door just as much as I deserve the door. And honestly, when it's my husband's birthday, I deserve to eat the Oreo ice cream pie, just like he deserves to eat the Oreo ice cream
Well,
pie.
and that's it, right? My book series is called Eat What You Love, Love What You Eat. So
Yeah.
I'm all about the Oreo pie. I mean, I think that one of the hidden triggers for eating more than you need that most people are not aware of, they've experienced it, but they've never named it. And that is that restriction and deprivation actually create more eating. They create more cravings, they create more thinking about food, obsession with food,
Yeah.
then they crave powerlessness or create powerlessness. And as a result, when you finally give in and eat it, it's very hard to stop because you think you won't get it again. And so when we can remove that judgment from food and just make decisions based on how we want to feel, eventually, with practice, with lots of mistakes, we
Yeah.
begin to make decisions that support our own well being, and live vibrantly because we've freed up all that extra energy and time to do the things that really do make a difference.
That's really a brilliant perspective. And it has us focusing forward. And I just read a book called The Gap in the Gain. When we're living in regret over past choices, we're focusing on the gap, on the things, the ways that we've fallen short. But when we focus forward on um, where we're going and how we did better today than yesterday in terms of how we feel about food, not in terms of the things that we write down in terms of number of calories, but just in terms of our mental clarity and our energy and our sleep, then we're focusing on the gain. And, that reminded me of the first time that I experienced your workshop. It was really life changing for me in so many ways because you designed this pause.
Mm.
And in the pause, there are so many lessons in life and leadership about the beauty of the pause. But could you run us through real quickly, like just a short rendition of that exercise that you led us through, where we went and got our plate off the buffet and then we sat down with our hands in our lap and we didn't eat it for a minute. Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Sure, sure. So for you listening, if you want to try mindful eating, please don't read anything by somebody who's telling you to chew every bite 32 times. That is not mindful eating. That is mindful eating, and that's not the goal. The goal is to become aware of the present moment where all decisions are made. So a really simple way to begin the process of mindful eating is to notice when you want to eat. Now, if you're like me in the past, I used to do a lot of dieting. So the moment I wanted to eat something, I would go through this mental calculation of how many calories, how many points, how many exchanges, depending on where I was in my, diet journey, right? Now, what I teach people is pause and check in. Am I hungry? Am I physically hungry? And Donna, this would be the equivalent of me taking a road trip from Arizona up to Colorado to see you and noticing a gas station
Yeah.
and deciding whether to get off the freeway.
Hmm.
I'm going to check my fuel gauge first. I'm not going to pull off every time I see a gas station. So that pause to check in and notice my own fuel gauge helps me decide, do I need fuel or am I just wanting it for whatever reason?
Right.
That becomes the decision point. If I am not hungry, I can still eat if I want to. As soon as
Right.
you tell yourself you can't eat unless you're hungry, you've made a new rule that you will then rebel against, right?
Right. Right.
Right? So you
If you
if
want
you
to pull off to get gas because you really want a bag of potato chips, it's okay.
That's right. That's right. So your other option at that point, if you're not hungry and you want to eat, is to just redirect your attention for a little while until you forget about eating, which will happen if it was just a commercial or you're bored. Or if you maybe want to redirect your attention just until you get hungry in a little while, that's great. Or you could also try to figure out what triggered this desire to eat. Why do I want to eat right now when I just had lunch 2 hours ago?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm really needing a break, but I don't like to give myself a break until everything's done. There's that perfectionism again, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So I'm using eating as an excuse to take the break that I really need. Could I just give myself permission instead?
Good
Uh,
point.
yeah, well, it's something I find a lot is a lot of us are too hard on ourselves, and so we end up using food as an excuse to take care of ourselves, but it just doesn't work very well or for very
Mhm.
long. Now, if you are hungry, then that takes you down a different decision path, which is, all right, then, well, what am I going to eat? And again, I'm not going to tell you what you should eat, but I teach 3 questions to ask for making that decision from the inside out. So it really is a process of being aware, and it all starts with, as you said, that pause of checking in and noticing what is going on right now in this present moment.
I love that. Well, and it taught me not only to take a pause because gratitude is just good for digestion, but um, to take a look at the plate and decide what I want to try first. Because I was raised in a home where you have to clear your plate, whether you're hungry or not. And that set me up for some really bad habits. I still clean my plate without thinking about whether I'm still hungry or not. And I
Coaching
know.
opportunity. So you said that in the present moment as though it is still true. So it's
Yeah.
going to continue to be true.
Yeah.
You said, I still clean my plate as it, and your brain goes, okay, thank you for that information, and
Okay, I
continues to
will.
carry it out. Thank you.
Right.
So a simple tweak that I often tell, to teach my clients is to say, in the past, I cleaned my plate, or, in the past, I struggled with eating more than I needed, or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
you can describe the behavior as it was, and open the door for doing it a little differently this time. Or even better, be more proactive and say, now I eat as much as I need. I don't have to clean my plate anymore.
That's brilliant. Boy, you're really coaching today. You know,
Can't help myself, Donna. I just can't help myself.
I have this like innate just aberration for waste. I can't stand to see waste. But I'm starting to look at the food that I leave on my plate as kind of a, a tithe in a way, a donation back to myself, not eating everything in front of me, but saying, you know what, I'm gonna sacrifice this portion, even though it's good, and uh, I would not suffer if I ate this. I would enjoy it, but
Yeah.
I'm just not going to because I know I'm gonna feel better if I just leave a little bit on my plate.
I love that. I love that. A tithe back to yourself. That's actually kind of takes us back to that pause earlier, because it's obviously I'm not going to be able to teach everything here, but one of the things we do teach is how to read a hunger and fullness scale for yourself. So you might remember that from that workshop. I can't remember whether I taught it. I don't always have the time to, but we can rate our hunger from 1 to 10,
Mhm.
one being absolutely famished, which is a high risk time for overeating,
Mhm.
to 10, which is, so stuffed you feel like you're going to pop.
Yeah.
And so figuring out how hungry you are will also help you decide how much food to serve yourself. And so as you start to practice that, you end up wasting less food because you're serving or ordering according to your body's needs.
Mhm.
Because similar to what you said, eating food you don't need is a waste.
Yeah.
You're literally turning yourself into a garbage can or a garbage disposal. Better yet, package up the extra and save it for tomorrow. It'll make another meal or the perfect size snack when you're a little bit hungry. So
That's a
we
good
don't,
one.
yeah, I don't like to waste food. I'm with you. I'm not saying, whatever, but I think you
Mhm.
can be more conscious. All of us can be more conscious in terms of how much we buy and serve ourselves.
I like that. My husband and I started eating our meal off of the salad plates because we always found that we would fill a plate and it was too much food. So we're just using smaller plates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. The brain is an amazing organ. it really adjusts to whatever information you provide it.
Yeah. Yeah. True. Well, this is so fascinating. I bet a lot of people are starting to ask questions like, how do I get into one of these courses? Do you teach on site? Do you have online? Can you kind of go over ways that we can engage with you?
Absolutely. Well, a good place to start would be our homepage, amihungry.com. And I am all about education and information. I think that's how we start planting the seeds for making change. It's why I'm having this conversation with you. So, on that homepage, you can actually download the first chapter of Eat What You Love, Love What You Eat for free. And it will show you the mindful eating cycle and help you figure out which pattern of eating you're generally following right now, and that will give you a start in terms of what needs to change. I mostly am teaching online right now. I have a program that I got a 2-day virtual retreat coming up, and then I teach these 6-month long programs, which I absolutely love. Most people are like, oh my gosh, 6 months to change a behavior they've been doing for 50 years. But nonetheless, in 3 months of the first part of that program, we walk through these workshops as a group, getting connected and really digging down to the root of why you eat, really getting beyond the eat less, exercise more paradigm. And then the last 3 months of the program is group coaching, small group coaching. So I'm working with people. As I say, when you're in the jar, you can't read the label. So
Uh-huh.
I'm working with them to help them figure out what their label says and help them start to notice the things that they're saying that might be keeping them stuck. So, and
Good.
then, I also train other health and wellness professionals to offer these courses and coaching too. So it's just a way, as a business person, I knew I couldn't reach everybody that needed help. So it's helped me leverage this really life-changing concept and give others the way to help their clients as well.
You're right. So like a nutrition coach could get certified in mindful eating.
Yes, not certified, but licensed. So we train
Licensed.
licensed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we train therapists to do binge eating programs. We have a
Uh-huh.
program for diabetes. I teach the class at Arizona State University, and other college professors can learn to teach the class. So it's just
Nice.
a way of delivering this to people that aren't in my circle of influence directly.
Beautiful. Well, that's a great segue into circle of influence. One of the ways that I help people manage the crazy is creating good processes and systems for running their business. So back to your perspective as CEO, how do you get leads for both your courses and your licensing program? And how do you manage cultivate those relationships?
Yeah, I wish I was better at that. I'm going to be transparent with you and say that I love to teach. I love to create programs. I love to talk about this stuff. So having a conversation with you would be a really good example of how I reach people. We also publish newsletters every week with an article and something useful for people. And so we also spent a lot of time earlier in our business life building that e-news list. So we've got an email list of around 35,000 people. And
Wow.
so, yeah, and many of them, people will say, I've been on your list for years, and then they will finally sign up. And every time they do that, they go, why didn't I sign up a decade
Sooner.
ago?
Yeah, right.
But I think that's it. I'm not, social media, maybe a little, I'm 61. Maybe I just missed that curve. It's not quite something I love, but I
Yeah.
do it, and it gives me an opportunity to connect. So, there's so much, Dawn, and there's so many ways, but I think for me, it's about service and education. People will buy from people they trust, and they trust me when they get good information consistently.
Yep, it's absolutely true. And do you manage that list through MailChimp or Constant Contact? What's your method?
We use Keep, which used to be Infusionsoft, and it's kind
Mhm.
of a trap because once you've been using something for a really long time, it's such a hassle to change over. So we've got a pretty big deep list of newsletters and contacts and tags and things like that. So that's where we are, and it's working out pretty well for us.
Yeah, yeah, Keep is a good one. It's one of the top ones. I've been helping somebody evaluate which one to use. It's good to know that that's working for you. So if I need someone to provide a testimony, I know who to ask.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you so much. What is, one or two or three things you want to leave our reader with as she might be driving to work or driving home from work right now, listening to this podcast?
Well, I think the main thing is to, if specifically as it relates to food. If you've been struggling for a really long time, I want you to know it's not your fault. the amount of guilt and shame that people have by the time they get to me is really, oh my gosh, it's so much part of diet culture.
Yeah.
It's not your fault. What we've been telling people to do doesn't work. I just published an article in a peer-reviewed journal about how this weight-focused, restrictive approach to eating doesn't work, and I've got the evidence. So it's not just you. Most people are not going to be able to stick with that long term. And the second piece is don't give up on yourself. There is a way to manage your eating that will allow you to eat what you love and teach you to love what you eat and create space in your life to live the big, vibrant life you crave, the one that you think you're going to get if you can finally follow a diet and you've been trying for, 5 decades. It's time to take a different approach.
Yeah. I love that. Well, and we know where they should start. Friends, you've been listening to the Crazy as Usual podcast. I have all the show notes in my LinkedIn newsletter. And I also have a link to that in Instagram where you can also connect with Michelle. So thanks so much, Michelle, for providing this time today. I hope that a lot of people feel like you've just really answered a question for how they should pursue living that vibrant life. I really would like to see everybody take advantage of that. And I hope that you have a really great, successful year living crazy as usual. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Donna.
And Michelle, I wanted to ask, because I'm literally working this afternoon on a CRM proposal for someone who's evaluating keep, go high level, and attract well. I don't think attract well is going to win. It's probably between keep and go high level. So I'm curious to know if there's any real like guiding advice you have for why you chose keep and why you like it.
We've been using it for probably 10 or 12 years when it was Infusionsoft. And, a lot of people complained that back then that it was clunky and complicated. It's all we've ever used. So I can't really compare it to anything else.
Okay. Yeah.
I will say that, when whatever they choose, they need to have the ability to tag their clients as they're coming in, grab at least a first name as they're coming in, and use what's available to them. I don't think we really nearly use what we should, but we've got various campaigns, various ways of like right now we have a campaign coming up going on for our retreat coming up, and so we're able to tag people as they click on the links. We're able to follow up with them. We're able to send campaigns that are basically a little lesson plan, all